Hello everybody. Right, welcome to this higher RUAE total recap, apart from the last question, where I'm going to go over all the question types for RUAE for higher. So this is to recap all question types in one handy place. It is to aid revision for RUAE for higher. It's to get straight in your head what each question type requires you to do. It is not instead of doing a whole thing, and it is just part of the revision that you should be doing. So some basics here. Bullet points. No marks for quotations at higher, unfortunately. You are expected to get more depth into your answer than you did at National 5, and you should make as many points as there are marks available. So we're going to look at each of these things sort of in a bit more depth and detail, but those are the basics. We are looking for bullet points. We are looking for quotations, but you're not getting any marks for them now, and we're looking for depth and a certain number. So these are the question types. In your own words: summary, tone, language, sentence structure, word choice, link, imagery, and effective conclusion. So each of these question types are likely to show up. The majority of the questions in the paper will be in your own words, but each of these potentially could be worth any number of marks in the paper. The final question will be dealt with in a separate video, and obviously is its own type of question with its own rules. So I'm going to go through some examples using an article from The Guardian, because The Guardian is free. So if you want to read the whole article to get a real understanding of what I'm talking about, this is the link. Obviously you can't click it because it's a video, but you can type in and try and find the article that I'm using if you want some more context. There it is. So in your own words and summary, you need to use bullet points, you need to show an understanding of the gist or main ideas of the writer, and you cannot quote. Do not do it, even accidentally or without quotation marks. By accidentally, I mean, I realise that if it's a complete accident, you won't even know you've done it. But the idea is that you should always check your answer to make sure you haven't absent-mindedly written half of the words from the paper into your answer. So, in your own words, how is the writer's experience of being an older woman different from expectations? 2 marks. I am a 52-year-old woman and therefore becoming accustomed to being invisible, and yet I feel anything but. In fact, it's more like being a patch of contested ground. So my first step would be to isolate the ideas. The ideas of she's expecting to feel invisible, she should feel invisible, but instead she feels anything but like contested ground. So then we've got the expectation and the reality there. We need to translate it. We need to change the words. So we're not using the word invisible, we're not using anything but, and we're not using contested ground. And now we need to ensure that our answer takes the question into account, that we're going to talk about which one is the expectation and which one is reality. What was she thinking was going to happen, and then what actually happens? So our answer to this question could be, she expected to be forgotten about or unimportant to most people, and instead she is the focus of a lot of attention and fighting, right? That is the kind of answer that we're looking for. It doesn't need to be a whole thing where it says she expects that because she is an older woman, she will have to, right? Just make it clear which one is the expectation and which one is the reality. Address both and make it clear which one is which, but you don't have to write the question out in the answer. It's as simple as that. Just bullet points. Give them the piece of information that they want. You are showing your understanding of the text, so give them the information that they want in bullet points. Okay, so simple summary again, bullet points, show an understanding of the gist, don't quote. That's all you have to do for in your own words. And that is any question where it does not say in reference to the text or with close reference to the text. Anytime that it says in your own words or summarize the main ideas, that is what you are expected to do. Okay, what about the rest of the questions? The majority of the questions, the imagery, language, word choice questions, this also goes for sentence structure. All of these question types, we are looking for you to use the TEAL formula. We need you to look for what it is specifically asking. So language can be anything. Imagery must be a simile, metaphor, or personification. And word choice, we are looking for 1 or 2 words maximum. We don't want loads and loads. You're not aiming for a whole sentence. 1 or 2 words that are particularly key to the writer's point. And these are analysis questions, right? Reading for understanding, we've checked off understanding. Analysis is what we're looking at now. So you need to analyse in depth and specify. I've said it so many times this year, but specificity is key. So here we go. Explain how the writer's use of language helps to establish how people feel about them. On one side, a strikingly articulate army of well-organised activists march forward to reassure me that I do not have to fade into obscurity, despite society's best efforts to put a giant paper bag over my head. That I have my best years ahead of me, and that a host of sparkling platforms, websites and communities are there to bolster my identity as I enter middle age and beyond. Should I want to start my own business, wear sequins to the supermarket, learn Finnish or start sheep farming, age should be no barrier. Go me! Right? So now we need to think, how does their use of language help to establish how people feel about them? And remember, for a use of language question, we can look at imagery, we can look at word choice, we can look at sentence structure, we can look at whatever we want in the analysis category. So isolate, identify, quote and analyze. This is the section that we have to use. Now we need to identify what techniques are being used, then quote and analyze using our TEAL structure. So, how about this for an answer? Metaphor. Put a giant paper bag over my head. Here the writer is making a metaphor, comparing what is happening to her to someone having a paper bag over their head. This shows she doesn't like what is happening. These are the kind of answers that we get a lot. They're not particularly helpful, so here's a better one. Metaphor. Put a giant paper bag over my head. The writer is saying that people around her would rather she didn't have a social presence or disappeared. This emphasises how many people disregard older women. Now, you could also definitely, and I would suggest, use the just as so too method here. Just as having a giant paper bag over your head would make you more anonymous and invisible, so too does the writer feel people are trying to do, right? So you can do the just as so too for any imagery, but this is the TEAL. If you can't remember the steps of TEAL, you can write TEAL down the side to help you remember. Don't do that in a critical essay, but you can do it here, okay? So that is what we're looking for. Let's have a look again for tone. Again, using that same formula, using that TEAL formula. On one side, a strikingly articulate army of well-organised activists march forward to reassure me that I do not have to fade into obscurity, despite society's best efforts to put a giant paper bag over my head, that I have my best years ahead of me, and that a host of sparkling platforms, websites and communities are there to bolster my identity as I enter middle age and beyond. Should I want to start my own business, wear sequins to the supermarket, learn Finnish or start sheep farming, age should be no barrier. Go me! It's pretty obvious what the tone of this one is, right? It's pretty clear what kind of attitude she has. And remember, tone is like, what feelings do they have? What are the emotions that the writer is putting across? So here it is humorous. Wear sequins to the supermarket, learn Finnish or start sheep farming. The writer generates a list of absurd and very disparate ideas to demonstrate how wild the suggestions she gets are. Each thing is an extreme example, making it seem silly. This creates a humorous tone to the article, showing that the arguments that people make are a little crazy. So the idea is that the things that she's saying are totally wacky, and that helps to make this sort of humorous tone. I would also definitely accept like a flippant tone. She is being quite like sarcastic about the way she's describing these people. Sentence structure is the next one. Again, part of that analysis, we are using the TEAL formula to look at the way the writer has used punctuation and structure to create an effective sentence. So it is the analysis. How are they creating this? On the other comes the legion of fresh-faced, pointing out with indubitable stats and facts on their side that I have begun my slide towards apparently inevitable selfishness and will any minute now become a stalwart reactionary, siding with the haves over the have-nots, propping up the establishment and generally bequeathing disaster to those younger than me. After all, my cohort has voted for Brexit, got its feet firmly on the housing ladder and is now benefiting from an age-related vaccination programme. There's a lot to conserve. So now we need to think, what punctuation is being used? How is she setting this up? You can also think about, is there like a strong contrast set up? Is there something where it's like a quick turnaround or opposing ideas put close together? That would also count under structure, but primarily the easiest thing to look for is punctuation. Okay, so look for speech marks, exclamations, questions, because those are the big pieces of punctuation that are really visible on a page. Then zoom in for your parentheses, your parenthetical kind of punctuation, and then look for short sentences after that. Let's have a go with an example. How does the writer's use of sentence structure help show she disagrees with their ideas? Well, she uses parenthesis. I'm not going to say that quotation again because I can't pronounce that word and I don't know why I included it. I know what it means, just can't say it. The writer includes the additional information that the opposing side have a more scientific approach to the issue. They have data to back up their ideas. The parenthesis adds to silliness of the idea as it is something that cannot be proven with statistics, so their ideas are equally flawed and spurious. So it's not good enough to say, parenthesis, here's the parenthesis includes extra information. This tells us that what she's telling us is important. You need to explain what it is that the writer is telling you, why they are telling you it, and how it helps their point. How does it help to put across what they're saying? Okay. Linking questions. The midlife cheerleaders are right to focus on the cruelty visited on many older people, and women in particular, by the rigid assumptions and structures of patriarchy, to rail against the idea that once past their usefulness as objects of sexual desire and reproduction, women are less valuable, and that their experiences and expertise in the wider world also operate according to a law of diminishing returns. Their professional capital seeming to wane just as that of their male counterparts rises. Okay. So you need to think now, because this is the first part, what is that bit about? What is she trying to say? But there is something uncomfortably status-driven about many of these initiatives. A conception of a successful life as something that we carefully assemble, job, family, home, and must then protect from depreciation or predation. These constructions are class and wealth-derived too, though. The visions of empowerment and liberation inherent in them frequently underpinned by a highly specific understanding of success. What it would look like if we were seeking to preserve or extend was not our place in the bourgeois hierarchy, but an intellectual freedom, a more radical sensibility. Okay, so now we need to look at the bit underlined and we need to think. How do we apply this formula? The word or phrase mla from the link links back because the first part of the passage is about and then sum it up in your own words. The word or phrase from the link links forward because the second part of the passage is about blah. Again, in your own words, explaining what they say. So in this case, we need to find something from the link that links to the paragraph before it and something from the link that links to the paragraph following it. The word initiatives links back because the previous part of the passage was about what it is being done to help older women avoid discrimination. These initiatives, the pushback against these ideas. The uncomfortably status-driven links forward because the next part of the passage is about how people only aim to help those who are of a higher class, and that it's all about the class of the people, and it's all to do with class, right? So that's the idea. Every paragraph is about something slightly different. That's why it's a different paragraph. So what they're asking you to do here is sum up the paragraph. Linking questions, I always think, are a bit of a hybrid between analysis and in your own words, because you need to find a quotation and analyse and prove that that is part of a link, but you are also expected to use in your own words to sum up what the main ideas from before and after are. Okay. Effective conclusion. So this is the final paragraph from that article. If only any of it felt like me, muddling through, trying to hop from one week to the next with as little distress and as much pleasure as possible. Feeling, as those of us of a certain age consistently point out, just as excited, volatile, imaginative and unfinished as we did in our youth. Sure, the scenery changes. Where years ago the achievements were paying the rent and the payoff getting drunk in the pub, I now count a week where the rain doesn't come in the roof and nobody has to go to A&E as a victory to be celebrated with a nice bit of Nigella and Netflix documentary about Fran Lebowitz. But the principle is the same. Do your best, try not to hurt anyone, and avoid falling into a big hole. That's good enough, isn't it? So we're asking now, how is this an effective conclusion to the piece of writing? Primarily, conclusions are effective when the writer returns to previous ideas, sums up the previous ideas, uses humour or offers advice, right? You're wanting to leave your reader on your side. These are all argumentative pieces. In general, they are arguing for a point. They are trying to tell you about something and they are trying to make you care. So going back over the main points so that it's fresh in your mind, using humour so that you feel sort of warmer and more affectionate towards the writer, or offering advice or next steps of what to do. So to answer an effective conclusion, you have to explain what element of the effective conclusion the writer is using. What are they implementing? Quote to prove that it's the case, find it in there, and then analyze to show how it is effective. So again, this is a little bit like one of those hybrid questions. It's half in your own words, because in your own words, what are they doing to make their conclusion effective? And then quote and analyze. Use that analysis skill to prove that that is the case. So the writer creates an effective conclusion as she weighs both options and then she rejects either one. If only any of it felt like me. Here she is referring back to the main body of the article where she talked through both options presented of how to age gracefully. It also draws us back to the start where she talked about feeling invisible and not fitting with either side's ideal. She brings us back to her personal experience. So if you remember in the first paragraph where she talks about feeling like contested ground, she comes back to that idea of the two sides fighting over her and her not fitting in either. Okay, so that is the concept. So the most important things are to specify. You will not get marks for telling me that parenthesis includes extra information. You will not get marks for telling me that that any piece of imagery compares one thing to another. Right? Those are all basic things. You are being asked to apply that knowledge to an article. How does using an exclamation mark, in this case, help this specific writer's point? And in order to prove that, you need to explain what their point is, because you need to show that you've understood it. You need to know the question type. Do not be writing in your own words answers to a question that requires you to use TEAL structure. Do not be using TEAL structure for a question that requires you to do something else. Please write as many marks as point available, right? So make as many TEALs as there are per mark. 1 TEAL, 1 mark. So if it is out of 4, 4 TEALs. If it is out of 5 and it's in your own words question, 5 bullet points is the minimum you should be writing. And that's why it's important to guess. If it's out of 5 and you come up with 4 and you really can't find anything else, write anything, write something. No teacher in the history of ever will judge you for writing something weird. We will judge you for leaving a big blank space. Don't waste time. If you halfway through the time finish, just go back, add more answers. Even if you've got 4 out of 4 for each one, there's 4 marks available, you've written 4 things, write a 5th, write a 6th if you can find them, because there's every chance that you will get more. If it's out of 4 marks, there will be more than 4 options on the marking scheme. If you write 6 things and 4 of them are on the marking scheme and 2 of them aren't, then you will get full marks. It's really important that you read the whole article and that you read both articles in totality in the hour and a half, and don't use outside knowledge. If you know loads about the topic, try and imagine that you don't, because people go wrong when it's an in your own words question and it says something like, explain 4 things the writer thinks is positive about, I don't know, PlayStations, and then someone writes 4 things that they know that they like about PlayStations. Doesn't get you any marks, because you're just expected to explain what it says in the article. Okay, so those are the important key messages. I will wish you luck, and I will see you in the final question video. Bye.